Hi, this is Rich Lieberman. We're live on a Saturday. Um, this is kind of a special report type of a broadcast, and I'm reacting to many of you have sent me emails, a couple of things with regards to my situation with my YouTube show and other things. This has nothing to do with that, but I'll get to that later on. But I want to talk about something I should have talked about a long time ago, but have been busy dealing with this, which I'm a lot better. But I have to talk about this, and kind of pains me to do this. But in order for me to be credible and constant, and what's the word? Uh, credible. Those of you who have complained, I've been silent on the latest Ron Owens situation. And there was an article the other day in the Chronicle. It was actually in sfchronicle.com, which is a little bit better, not saying a lot, than SFgate, which is a total joke. The Chronicle had an article about Ron. And so I'm going to take this stance. And I've already said this, not lately, to Ron and his wife, Jan Black. And those of you, maybe I should do this at the very outset, but I just assume that everybody knows the situation. All right. Ron Owens used to be a very celebrated talk show host at KGO Radio. Has won a Marconi Award, has won a Hall of Fame award, and nobody disputes. Well, I shouldn't say nobody. Few people would dispute the fact Ron Owens is one of the greatest KGO radio talk show hosts, if not one of the more great radio talk show hosts of all time, every station included. And Ron began his career in San Francisco in 1975 and spent more than 40 years at KGO. His daughter was involved and still is in a case having to do with a former Bachelor television show contestant. And she has been accused of perjury, of some very serious accusations. And frankly, it's a serious situation. In fact, Laura Owens, his daughter, was indicted by an Arizona grand jury. And so we will have a case involving Laura Owens, unless it's settled. And I don't see that coming. We will have a case pending. We have a case pending. And so Ron, back in the beginning of the year, started a GoFundMe page. And Ron has been dealing with many health issues, cancer, and is in an ongoing health situation with Parkinson's disease, which he is suffering from. And the GoFundMe page, which is still out there and was relaunched by Ron himself, has raised about $127,000. His goal was $140,000. So the Chronicle did another article about 5 days ago. And I talked to Ron, and I've spoken to Jan Black. And I actually even invited him to come on my show and to basically air it out. That was a couple of months ago. Now, the latest article, which, my opinion, goes to the heart and soul of what would be constituted as journalism malpractice. The author, and I'm not going to name her, it's a she, mentions the Laura Owens situation. And she doesn't even ask him, at least not in the article I saw, about the fact that he's relaunching and the GoFundMe page and doesn't ask him directly about the fact that it seems to come at a time when, there's legal fees. I asked Ron a few months back and Jan Black about this because there was insinuations by myself, others perhaps, was were these funds, some of them, being misused and in fact paying a lawyer? At the time I said, I'll say it today with a caveat. He said no. Jan Black said no. Because that's a very, very serious allegation about using GoFundMe page, recipients sending money, or excuse me, sorry, there's been a lot going on lately. People sending money ostensibly to help Ron Owens with his health maladies, expenses, medical costs, all those things. If you take that and misrepresent what you're using those funds for, it's a very serious situation, serious legal charge. He insists he was not and is not. Now, I read the article two times. There was an article in SF Chronicle. I'm sure most of you have read the article. And I've been accused, not publicly, but I've been accused of being quiet. When the irony of all ironies is I have been trying very very hard to get Ron, not lately, it's been a couple of months, to come clean and explain the situation. Both Ron and Jan said because of legal situations, they cannot do that. But Ron especially. And right now, so I've changed my stance. And I have come to the conclusion that Ron, you have to come out and air this out. You could be surrounded by your lawyer. We're not here to affect the legal situation ongoing with Ron's daughter, Laura, who is under indictment. It's a very serious charges. But without talking about that, with regards to now once again asking for more money to offset your health situation, health costs, I'm sorry. And a couple of things. First off, the Chronicle, once again, showing itself to be the dimwit that it is. It has become, no, it's been that way. Not to press Ron Owens and to ask him directly about this latest article, which you can Google. I'm not going to link it. Is ridiculous. It's just mentioning it and just kind of letting Ron sort of go over it without at least addressing it directly, to me, is ridiculous. It has to be talked about and pointed out. There is a normal feeling, hey, what's he using this money for? Why is he asking for more money? Now, I want to state something. I believed Ron, and to some degree, I still believe him, but not addressing this, and not in, and I mean this in a forceful way. Ron, come clean. Not that you've fabricated anything. Just tell people what the situation is, and that includes Jan Black, Ron's wife, for over 40 years now, because there's a lot of innuendo and gossip, and it does nothing to further the belief held by many, and it's a very reasonable thought, that what is this money actually, where is it going? What is it being used for? Tell us that. Convince us that this is not being misrepresented and that the money, at least some of the money, is not going to a legal situation or a lawyer. It would at least offset the complete, very, very, as I just said, reasonable conclusion that something smells to high heaven here. Now, if I was somebody like I would try to be, somebody with no dog in the fight and looking at this as objectively as possible, I would reasonably say, he's asking once again for money. They've raised now almost $128,000, a lot of money. And of course the goal was around 140,000. Why 140,000? I have no idea, but whatever. But not to address this, and at the same time, and this should have been brought up in the Chronicle, and it was, but very, very minutely, almost obscure. And it first of all, it only further adds to more speculation. And it creates the impression of some impropriety. Once again, not proven. Ron Owens denies it. Jan Black said there's absolutely no situation where we're taking that money or some of it and paying a lawyer off. They told me at the time, both Jan and Ron, that they had a lawyer who was working this case pro bono, a legal term of gratis, free. Now, again, do I believe them? I did at the time, and I still believe them. But you got to erase this very significant question. There's a series of questions. The Chronicle didn't do that, nor did the author of this article. And that's very distressing, frankly, ridiculous. I keep saying that word, ridiculous. Talk about an elephant in the room. And making matters even worse, 2 articles at the beginning of the year that launched the first GoFundMe campaign wasn't even brought up. This case with Ron's daughter is now over 2 years old. And I said that the other side on this, these are the people that believe or work with this bachelor guy, that maybe there was some questionable situation regarding people who maybe had an axe to grind. Well, now, after this latest article, it is downright ridiculous that Ron was not pressed about this. Coincidence? I doubt that. I'm skeptical now myself, and I'm willing to leave the benefit of the doubt, frankly, folks, because I know Ron has had issues in life, of course. The cancer, Parkinson's disease, which necessitated the move to Arizona, where he lives now. He used to live in San Francisco and moved to Scottsdale a couple of years ago to alleviate the onset of Parkinson's, and believe that a warmer climate would be more, shall we say, conducive to dealing with this very serious health issue. But now I've reached the conclusion that Ron doesn't necessarily have to be my show. Ron has to come out and address this directly, explain, state categorically that the money, none of the money has been or will be used to pay a lawyer, legal expenses, what have you. Because there is this question now, and I'd be a fool if at least didn't address it. And I'd also be, as I stated at the beginning of this broadcast, I would not be critical in my own way by not talking about it, because I've spoken to all of you about my relationship growing up as I did in the Bay Area, and being able to both meet Ron Owens and Jan, but to have a friendship with Ron that lasted a good 25 years, a time when I was a teen, 13 years old, and explained to all of you, and I've talked about it, written about it, that I viewed Ron as kind of a legendary figure that he eventually became, with his awards, popularity, fact that he was sort of the big horse amongst that stable of KGO radio greats, which made KGO the other hosts too. And I can think of Jim Eason and Jim Dunbar, who also did news, and people like Art Finley. More recently, John Rothman, Pat Thurston, who I very much enjoyed, both of them as talk show hosts. Ron Owens was at the king of the, maybe king is not a good word to use these days, but Ron was at the forefront of what made KGO great. And I got to know him very well. Was at the place where he met Jan Black, and soon after they became married. And look, I know, and I spoke about this. I'm not a father. I'm not a parent of young kids or, children, adults, children to begin with. But I understand Ron being a father and Jan Black being a mother to their daughter and protecting their daughter. That's normal. That would be highly bizarre and unusual if they did not protect their daughter under the most difficult of circumstances. On the other hand, when you enter into the realm of the public domain with articles, several articles now, about getting money raised via a GoFundMe campaign on a matter which is entirely reasonable, also health situation and costs associated with healthcare and hospital stays and all that. But when you have the situation simultaneously with your daughter, and that's expensive to defend criminal cases, especially, and not have the normal assumption by many that is there something going on here? Is there something fishy taking place? And not to mention the fact there's been a second relaunching of this GoFundMe campaign, telling people to donate again. Please, I need more money. And not draw the conclusion about something. Is the money being used in the manner in which it's being presented? I would be suspicious myself. I would be. And I also want to answer to those who said I've been quiet. I haven't been quiet because I wanted to be quiet. I stated my case. I've spoken to Ron 4 or 5 times, have not spoken to him in a couple of months. I know he watches this show, as does Jan. And I know I probably, will hear from both. It's time now that Ron and Jan, but especially Ron Owens, at least address this. Put out all the mysteries. Try to, just tell us what's going on. And that's it. That's all you got to do. After that, if somebody agrees or disagrees or what have you, at least you've stated on the record where exactly the money is going to. And that's it. Address it. Deal with it. When I say come clean, I'm not suggesting that they've either lied or misrepresented. But people who feel this way deserve, at this point, to be heard and be at least addressed, their concerns, their allegations. I think it's fair game. This has become public again, and to not at least have an author of the article, the news writer, press Ron and Jan on this, to me, was really, again, journalistic malpractice. Surprised that his editors or her editors at the Chronicle didn't make more hay of this. Come here or anywhere, Ron, and talk about this and set the record straight. May not be the answers people want to hear, but at least you can address this, because until you address this, it's going to be ongoing gossip and innuendo, if that's the case, rumor mongering. That does nothing to help your cause, Ron, or Jan's, or for that matter, Laura Owens. There's just simply too much situations involving, is he telling the truth or not? There's a lot of, scuttlebutt taking place with good reason. So, okay, we've addressed that. I will make a comment about something entirely different, but about my own situation here on my YouTube show. I again invite many of you who please read me or watch me now to contribute so that I can continue to give you news that you're not going to get anywhere else. I'll be more specific in a later broadcast. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.